everyone, I'm Captain Logan, and welcome once again to the layered and brain-splitting Comic Vault. Today on the Vault, I'm going to review one of the absolute strangest comics I've ever laid my hands on. I have not reviewed a lot of Multiversity. I'm planning on eventually doing a Vault on all of it together, or at least kind of an overview of them, because they are a lot of one-shots that all kind of, look like they're culminating into a big thing at the end of all of this. This is basically Grant Morrison doing a whole lot of commentary, maybe some criticism about various elements in the industry of comics and also the medium of comics. And of course, as he's done with a lot of things before, he's doing it in this kind of meta reach out sort of into the real world kind of thing. This is the furthest I think he's ever taken that, or at least with my limited knowledge of Grant Morrison. I've certainly read some Morrison. I haven't read anything like everything, but this is certainly the farthest I've ever seen anybody go with the notion of trying to bring the reader into a comic book and making the comic world itself part of the reality of the person who's reading it. This is absolutely fascinating. It was something I really felt the need to sit down and talk about. And so I'm going to do that right now. I think I reviewed maybe the first issue when I was still doing new acquisitions, and then another one somewhere in the middle. So I'm going to talk about this mostly as its own piece, and as I said, these kind of work that way, although I assume that when this is all said and done and I go back and I read all of it, there's going to be a lot of stuff in this that is suddenly going to click more into place. I'm not going to pretend to completely understand everything I'm looking at here, and what's kind of fun and maddening at the exact same time about this is that Morrison expects you to feel that way about it. He expects you to read it and not to immediately grasp everything. He kind of comments on that in the issue, and as I said, it is the most meta thing, comic-wise, I've ever looked at. This kind of takes the whole idea from Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe that I was talking about when I reviewed that a couple years back, and just goes completely full tilt monster crazy with it. In that review, I was talking about how Deadpool breaks the fourth wall, and he knows he's being manipulated by somebody, and that he lives in a fictional world, but he never talks about it as a comic book. He never seems to know exactly that he's necessarily like inside panels, or he certainly doesn't discuss it that way, and he will occasionally really creepily kind of look at you, the reader, through a panel, so he knows that there's something watching him, but it's kind of vague and intangible, and he's somewhat in the dark about it. In this, let me see if I can explain this. In this, not only does our protagonist know he's in a comic book, but he is the comic that you're reading, inhabits a universe inside of that comic, reaches out and talks to you and you're in another universe, and also your consciousness is part of the consciousness of everybody else who is reading this book, and that comes together to create the protagonist. Yeah, so if you're looking for a down-to-earth story, this is certainly not for you, but certainly that should be old news by now with Multiversity, and really Grant Morrison in general. Of course, Grant Morrison's philosophy, generally speaking, is that comics don't have to be realistic, and maybe they shouldn't be, and that the realism comes in what is being said about us, what's being said about people and the human condition and that kind of thing, but that you should let your imagination run wild. This is a medium, being a visual medium and being an artistically driven medium, where it makes a lot of sense to do a lot of this really crazy out there stuff, and again, to just be really super creative and allow the really strange cosmic golden and silver age stuff to happen. And what he does with this, and what I've seen him do with a lot of other things too, is he uses that silver and golden age stuff, but he kind of modernizes it to a degree. So he will have characters speak the way they spoke in the silver and golden age, but there's this kind of unsettling twistedness to it, where it's not just for kids, where it's for us, it's for adults that maybe, I want to say remember that time. Of course, a lot of us are too young now for that. There have been several generations now since Golden Age, and now, of course, even Silver. But it's this kind of throwback thing to pay tribute to that era, and maybe even to say that there's no reason that era should be completely gone, and to try to rope it into the modern era and find ways to blend them. So Grant Morrison will have really creepy, scary stuff. Even like I would describe some of what's in this as even like Lovecraftian horror, and he'll have characters that have a lot more dimension to them and aren't just the kind of Homer type hero that is kind of two-dimensional, does no wrong, or that kind of like legendary hero. These characters can have depth to them, but that far out there insane stuff is still there. So what he's doing in this is, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on here, ideal-wise. He is commenting on the comics medium itself and how it has evolved, the ways in which it has evolved and the ways in which it hasn't changed at all at the same time. And I think that he is kind of discussing, and to a degree he's been doing this through all of Multiversity, he's kind of discussing the medium itself and also the commercial nature of the medium all at the same time. And, you could argue that those are kind of intertwined, and you really can't talk about one without talking about the other. So there is a lot of stuff in this about how the commercial nature of it, selling this to people, trying to get people to buy multiple issues of the thing, and that kind of thing, is a lot of the driving force behind a lot of the decisions that are made in what's going to happen to characters and what the stories are. And one thing that I find really interesting in this is this character Ultra. Again, created by all of the consciousnesses of the folks that are reading this. So you are part of this person's conscience, and you're constantly being talked to. This character and other characters in the book know that you're reading the book. And it's a really interesting way to get you involved. I'll talk about the interactive nature of this in a moment. But as he is being created, first of all, it's really fun. This is such a creative story. It's really fun because he is made up of all of the stuff, all the inks and paper and all of the like all the technical terms for all of the different parts of a comic book are used to describe what he's made out of. And the idea is, in Earth Prime, which is the world that we live in, there are no... It's impossible to have superheroes. We don't have the possibility for the supernatural. So the closest thing we can get to is a comic book, and are the characters that are in a comic book. And so that's why Ultra is created, because we need him to help stop the horrible things that might seep into our universe from these other comic universes. And all the way through Multiversity, the comic book and all these different universes is used as the gateway to go from one into another one. And so they all have comic books, and that's how you're able to see into all these other different universes. And it's a really creative way to bring the medium itself into this story and to actually include us in the narrative. And there's this scene that I found kind of disturbing where as he's being created, he's being instilled with everything that makes up comics and everything that's made up comics through history. And you see a 2-page spread where of 4 panels where he begins with the very innocent, stalwart kind of violence that you had in the early Golden Age comics, where it's very black and white, and yeah, he punches a guy, but he's in the right, and then it slowly for the next 3 panels becomes gets us more and more to where we're at now, to the more gratuitous kind of violence, and the go as far as you possibly can in this very cynical gray area. Even the superheroes will punch a guy straight through a midsection, and I think it's really interesting that Morrison has this character who believes that after he's gone through that in his creation, that believes in this gray area and that there is no such thing as evil, and then he presents this character with evil, and when we get toward the end, we have this super creepy, like eyeball egg thing. Morrison describes it as an egg with bat wings that kind of stares directly into your soul through the panels, and it is just a straight up evil thing that's trying to make its way into our universe through these panels. And Ultra goes through kind of a character arc where it seems like he's kind of rediscovering this Golden Age idea of good versus evil, and that maybe sometimes there isn't a gray area, or at least that's how I'm reading it, having read through this a couple of times. And that's really interesting. I think there's an argument being made here that there's still room for, which is, and by the way, this is really interesting considering how incredibly complex and mind-bending this comic is. I mean, like, my brain is just swirling thinking about it. There is an argument being made for the action comic that doesn't have to be about a lot of these grandiose ideas. And while this is about a lot of grandiose ideas, there's this argument that is, and if memory serves, it's presented as if it's by somebody reading the comic that's texting about it. Because remember that you've got all of the real people reading the comic that are supposed to kind of be part of the story. And a lot of the criticisms that Morrison gets for things are in this, and the idea, and of course, it's a little weird because with this whole meta thing, metafiction always breaks down at a place because you do certainly still have the one person who's manipulating all of this, right? So Grant Morrison, while he's created a character in Ultra who is self-aware, is he really self-aware? Because he's still not a real person, and Morrison has just decided that he's self-aware, so he's still in control just as much as he would be if he was, say, writing Batman, who is, not self-aware in the sense that he doesn't know that he's in a comic book. So it breaks down at a place, but it's really interesting because you have, I mean, if you read too far into it, it's like time travel and your brain explodes. But if you take it on the terms of, if you take it on its own terms in the sense that it is breaking into our universe, the idea is that you have some of Morrison's detractors reading this book and saying things like, it's just weirdness for weirdness sake. That's in here. And in the narration, it says, don't worry, it's not just weirdness for weirdness sake. You have another part where he criticizes himself, or he's pretending like there is someone criticizing him for doing yet another treatise, he says, on comic fiction and doing another deconstruction of this stuff. But curiously, toward the end, and he even makes fun of himself for the design of the egg eyeball thing with wings. And then toward the end, there's even this bit, and I think this is really interesting, asking why we can't just have a good action story again. And the big question, and I can't fully answer it, I don't think, is Morrison when he says some of these things, especially that last one, especially the thing about just having a fun, kooky action story, is that Morrison presenting the other side of an argument, or is he arguing with himself? Does Morrison himself think that sometimes it's okay to just have comics that aren't really about a lot more than just good versus evil? And at the end of the day, and I don't know if I'm right about this, but I'm having a hard time not looking at this as a comic that is... And of course, it's not really over yet, because we're going to have, I think this is the second to last of the Multiversity comics, and it sort of kind of maybe ends on a cliffhanger. It's hard to read this ending until I get the last one. But I'm having a hard time not reading this as an argument against always having to have this kind of deconstructive meta kind of comic. It's almost like it's arguing with itself, and I don't think it's Morrison saying I've done too many of these, I shouldn't do them anymore. This is fascinating, and Morrison has a matchless imagination. But at the same time, I think he might be saying that there's still room for that kind of thing, and that's why he keeps going back to Silver and Golden Age. I don't know. It's fascinating. I've read this twice, and I still feel like I need to read it again. And that's, of course, what a lot of people really like about Morrison, that as you read through a Morrison book, especially something that that goes on for a long time, he's constantly setting things up that he's going to pay off down the road, and even like really tiny, subtle things that once you go back and read it again, you realize that there are so many little gems that you never would have discovered reading it the first time. And I had that with this. I'm glad I read this the second time before I talked about it. This would have been a much different review. And if I sat down and read it a third time, it would probably be even more of a different review. And maybe I should have done that. The beginning of this is really fascinating, but also hilarious, because Ultra has come back in time from, it says, 24 hours or 38 pages in my future, in the future of the person reading this. I love that. So it's immediately presenting itself as what it is. I really like that right off the gate, Morrison says this is a comic book that knows it's a comic book, and you are somehow or rather part of it, and your future is already known. So that's interesting. There's already a destiny thing. Oh boy, I love that like, there's nothing I can do about how this unfolds. It makes me a part of it. It says that I must keep reading in order for things to happen, which is simply the nature of fiction, right? It's somewhat of an active experience. If you're not reading it, the action is not happening, at least inside your own mind. That's where these characters come alive. I love that kind of existential quandary. There's a lot of questioning the nature of reality in this, and I'm a sucker for that kind of thing. And so, and so it kind of presents the notion that if you're not reading this, and of course there's all those other people that are supposed to be reading this, so I guess it happens for them, but this is supposed to be in kind of all-inclusive, and we're all part of it. So it's really interesting. But the idea is, if nobody is reading this, then these events aren't actually happening. So it goes as far as to say that to warn you not to skip to the end. And there is a line of dialogue at the beginning of this that I think is simultaneously the most obvious or one of the most obvious and profound simultaneously statements I've ever read in a comic book. Ultra says not to skip ahead because if you... Let me see if I can find it. Oh yeah, here it is. Whatever you do, don't look ahead to the end or it's all over. This had me with that line. I was so compelled to continue because I thought that was ultra clever, but also at the same time, of course, it compelled me to kind of want to skip to the end and see what the last page is. But of course, I didn't do it because that's cheating. I gotta find out what happens in the middle so that I'll understand the end, and I'm kind of anticipating some kind of a really exciting, surprising ending, and all the way through this, it keeps making a big deal out of that ending, and building this kind of anticipation for it. When we get to the end, I didn't really feel the way I sort of expected to with all of the build-up for that. But I wonder if part of that is because, I mean, what happens at the end is really, really interesting, and I'm not even gonna give it away here. I know I do a lot of spoiler stuff here, and I've told you a lot about this already, but I do think I want people to experience that ending for themselves. If you've read it, I'd like to know what you thought of that, and if you turned the page and were kind of expecting more, if it was kind of a letdown for you. But and I'm not saying I was let down. I just kind of want to see what happens after this. At the same time, this is literally its own piece, in the sense that you are reading a comic book that is supposed to be also simultaneously the character you're reading about. He is a comic book, and he is somehow this comic book. Yeah, I know, noodle that one, right? And so when you get to the end of it, the notion that I might have to read the next issue in order to, you know, the conclusion of all of this, to be really satisfied with that, is somewhat counterintuitive, considering that this is kind of one piece, and it's played like I'm reading this comic book. And so, but anyway, so the whole idea of this, the interactive nature of this, as I said earlier, is you know, really fascinating, because I just really like this idea that you have to keep reading or it's not happening. And all the way through, there are a lot of different kind of contradictory things that are pushing and pulling you to maybe keep reading or maybe not to. But I would argue that that everything that is said to suggest that you shouldn't keep reading or you will help be responsible for the destruction of the universe is actually just as compelling, or even more compelling, than to try to get you to keep reading, than the things that tell you that you should actually keep reading. Because it's exactly the same thing as putting like a closed box in a room and telling a person not to open it. Now you are absolutely fascinated to know what's in that box. You have to know. Human nature, it seems to, at least for the majority of people, compel us to want to know what's in that box. It drives us absolutely crazy not to know. I recently saw an episode of The Cosby Show where Heathcliff Huxtable gets a piece of mail, but it's addressed to his father, and it claims that he has won a sweepstakes. And he really wants to know what's in it, but of course it's addressed to his father, and his father's out of town, so he has to wait until he gets back to find out what's actually in it. And he's just going crazy, not getting to open the envelope. And finally, at the end of the episode, he opens the envelope, and his dad has just won a toaster. And it turns out that it was kind of nothing. And I think that for a lot of us, we are really compelled to know. And so even as this thing keeps saying, don't read ahead, I have to, and of course I know this is just a comic book, and I'm not going to be responsible for the destruction of the universe by continuing to read a comic. And once again, every single potential criticism that could be lobbed against this idea, or the way it's presented, it being too self-indulgent or confusing, or again weirdness for weirdness' sake, every single thing I could even begin to come up with is in the book. It criticizes itself, or it at least suggests those criticisms as if they're from the minds of the people that are reading it, and that's one of them. And so that's really interesting. And I'm just sitting here like everything I could think of. It's a weird thing to review, because it's sort of reviewing itself, which is a thing I would usually frown upon. But the thing is so absolutely meta that you know that's one of the aspects that it's about, the highly critical nature of comic reviewers and the way we look at this stuff. There's an idea in this of Ultra being able to render someone or something into text, and that he's able to defeat them more readily because text is susceptible to criticism. That is absolutely it's just ultra clever, and I think that's really cool. But there's this part where the big bad guy at the end, the Batwing eyeball thing, says, don't worry, it's just a silly comic book. What possibly could go wrong. But I found myself kind of hooked into this and being so sucked in and fascinated by this idea that I am part of this universe. that even though, of course, on a conscious level, I know that this is Grant Morrison writing this, that this is a commercial comic book with ads in it, which, by the way, kind of take you out a little bit. If we had to have ads, it would have been cool if they were somehow kind of meta ads, and that Morrison could actually kind of talk about that, because with everything else about the comics medium, and I mean, I'm talking almost everything, he talks about the purpose or the lack of purpose now in our modern age of thought balloons. I mean, like all of this stuff is here. It would have been really cool if somehow ads could have been somehow roped into that. But I actually found myself at one point having to, the first time I read this, put it down and go off and do something else and then come back to it. I had a split second where I found myself thinking, oh, what is happening in this book without me being there? Because I'm supposed to be reading it. It keeps telling me that if I don't read it, something's going to happen, or if I do read it, something's going to happen, and either way, I'm a part of this. This is a fascinating read. I really enjoyed this, but of course, I'm also kind of like going nuts trying to put it all together and decide what exactly everything means. There's a whole lot of stuff in this that I've not even discussed. I'll let you read it for yourself. But anyway, I'm certainly recommending this, and even if you haven't been reading Multiversity at all, this is a fascinating experience just to pick up and read on your own, on its own. And I would really recommend it for people who are interested in this idea of metafiction and the idea of exploring the comics medium through a character who realizes that he's in a comic book, and just discussing the nature of fictional characters and how real they can actually become to us. As I said, I really love the way Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe did that. This takes it to a whole other bizarre level. And as I said, I'm going to read it a third time and see what else I pick up from it. Everybody, thanks as always for watching. I sure appreciate it. And if you would like to send us anything to review here on The Vault, me or Vince, be sure to go to your local post office and send us a package. The P.O. Box is right here, and if there's anything coming up that you'd be interested in seeing me review, any single issues you know are coming soon, feel free to leave a comment and let me know about those, and I'll certainly consider doing separate videos on them. I'm being very, very selective right now about what I review as far as these single issue things, and I'm hoping to start getting back more to the to a mini-series and arcs and things when they finish, as more time is becoming available to me. So I'm doing these as often as I can. Obviously, I'm really behind. I've got a stack of comics like a foot high of stuff that I haven't even gotten to yet. But this, of course, is about a week old now. We've already had this week's set of books. I'm going to review, if not the 0 issue of Convergence, the first issue of Convergence. I haven't read that yet, so I don't know if it's something I want to sit down and do a video on. Yeah, I haven't read it, so I don't know what's in it. But anyway, if there's something that you think I ought to take a look at on its own as a single issue, leave a comment, let me know, and any recent arcs and things that you want to see me cover, feel free to mention those things too. I'm going to do as many of these as humanly possible. Eventually, I'm hoping to get back to several of these a week. Everybody just be patient with me. My schedule is absolutely insane right now. We're still doing the tour for the Midwest in panels, and I've still got a baby in the house. He's 5 months old now, and he's still quite a handful. So anyway, as time goes forward and more time becomes available to me, I should be able to do lots more of these for you. Anyway, thanks again for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you again next time. I'm Captain Logan, and happy reading.